Hey friends, good evening. Tonight, we are entering a world where even thunder has a heartbeat, where the sea whispers secret words and the gods behave just like us, only a little more dramatic. A world where love turns into storms, jealousy becomes divine law, and even immortals cannot escape heartbreak. This is ancient Greece. Not the Greece locked inside dusty history books, but a living, breathing stage of drama, filled with stories of gods, love, and chaos. If these history-based stories of mine can make even a small place in your heart, then subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and tell me in the comments from which corner of the world you are listening. Honestly, it makes me deeply happy to know how far our stories travel. Now, dim the lights a little. Turn the fan on softly so that a gentle breeze touches your cheek. And come, let us return to that age when the sky would roar, the sea would rage, and the gods would walk among humans carrying emotions just like ours.
Tonight we start at the very peak of Olympus, with the sky itself trembling at his will. The clouds bending and shifting under the command of one god, Zeus. He was not born into calm or quiet. He came screaming into a world already fraying with tension. His father, Cronus, feared his own children, convinced that any of them might one day rise to overthrow him. And so, as each child was born, Cronus swallowed them whole, a gruesome ritual disguised as parental care. The kind of story that makes you wonder if absolute power always corrupts absolutely. But Rhea, his mother, was clever, daring, and desperate. When Zeus came into the world, she did not surrender him to that stomach of tyranny. Instead, she wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes, fed it to Cronus, and spirited Zeus away to a secret refuge. There, away from the gnawing fear of his father, the boy grew strong, cunning, and full of potential, the kind of potential that promised storms and revolutions alike. As Zeus grew, so did his ambition. He did not merely wish to survive. He desired to claim his rightful place among the gods, to lead, to command, to shape reality itself. When the moment arrived, he staged a rebellion that shook the heavens. Cronus, mighty as he was, could not withstand the cleverness and ferocity of his son. With a blade, symbolic and brutal, Zeus tore open his father's belly, freeing his swallowed siblings, Poseidon, Hades, Hestia, Demeter, and Hera. The original dysfunctional family, forged in blood, chaos, and rebellion, was born. One can imagine Freud sitting back with a satisfied nod if he were there, scribbling notes about power, repression, and the eternal struggle between fathers and sons. Once the Titans were vanquished and the war of succession was settled, Zeus claimed the throne of Olympus. He became king, ruler of the skies, master of thunder and lightning, the arbiter of cosmic order. In theory, he upheld justice, enforced oaths, and maintained the delicate balance of divine and mortal realms. In practice, well, Zeus had other priorities. He had a restless curiosity, a godly appetite for pleasure, and a sense of humor that often bordered on chaos. He could turn into a swan, a bull, an eagle, even a golden mist, all in pursuit of those he desired. Mortal and immortal women alike, nymphs and goddesses were caught in his orbit, and the result was an ever-expanding constellation of demigod children, each of whom would go on to shape myth and legend, carrying with them fragments of their father's brilliance and irresponsibility. Zeus's love life was less a series of choices than a force of nature. He married his sister, Hera, a union that was supposed to embody divine harmony and the sacredness of marriage. Instead, it became an endless saga of betrayal, revenge, and celestial melodrama. the king of gods, whose hand could hurl lightning to obliterate mountains, was equally capable of emotional negligence, infidelity, and unbridled desire. Hera, the goddess of marriage, bore the burden of this relationship with a blend of dignity, wrath, and cunning. She could curse, transform, or punish those who crossed her path, particularly women whom Zeus pursued or abducted. Yet she was not defined solely by vengeance. Hera protected women in childbirth, upheld sacred oaths, and maintained a presence of divine authority that commanded temples, priests, and loyal cities such as Argos and Samos. Zeus, meanwhile, was a study in contradictions. When he was not pursuing his interests or punishing mortals for offenses real or imagined, he enforced laws of heaven with an impartiality that could be terrifying in its precision. He struck down arrogance, punished hubris, and yet in the same breath could reward ingenuity, courage, or simple devotion with astonishing blessings. He was respected, feared, adored, and often despised in equal measure, a god whose power was absolute, but whose personality was notoriously difficult to contain. He was protector and predator, judge and instigator all at once. The storms themselves seemed to obey his moods. When he was angry, clouds swelled, the skies darkened, and lightning rained down on mortals unlucky enough to draw his attention. When he was pleased, the sun broke through, gentle winds caressed the fields, and rain came at perfect intervals to nourish the crops. His control over the natural world was precise, almost artistic, yet always tinged with the caprice of his temper. Farmers prayed, sailors sacrificed, and kings offered homage, all knowing that Zeus's gaze could either bless or obliterate with equal ease. Zeus's siblings were not passive spectators of his reign. Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia all carved domains for themselves, each with their own priorities, rivalries, and power struggles. Yet it was Zeus's will that bound the family together, or at least kept them in a delicate, tension-filled orbit. This was no harmonious celestial hierarchy. It was a court of personalities, passions, and egos so immense they could reshape the world. And Zeus, the youngest, had become its uncontested center, a god of sky and storm, of power and desire, whose story would echo through human imagination for millennia. Even as king, Zeus remained unpredictable. He was quick to laugh, quick to anger, and quick to punish perceived wrongs. Mortals would often be struck down for forgetting an offering, a prayer, or a moment of humility. Cities would rise and fall under his whims. Heroes would succeed or fail at his discretion. Yet his presence was also a source of guidance, protection, and order. He was the ultimate paradox, a god whose capacity for chaos was matched by only his sense of justice. A father to many, but a mentor to few. A ruler of Olympus, and yet often ruled by the unruly tides of his own passions. And beneath the thunder, the power, and the spectacle, there was a human element to Zeus too. He was ambitious, curious, flawed, and undeniably alive in a way that mortal kings could inly envy. The stories of his transformations, affairs, battles, and judgments were not merely myths. They were reflections of ambition, desire, and the consequences of power unchecked. To hear of Zeus is to hear of storms, of skies that can both nourish and destroy, and of a presence so commanding that even the other gods, eternal and mighty as they were, circled around him in awe, fear, and reluctant respect. This is Zeus, not a distant, untouchable figure, but a living, breathing entity filled with contradictions, capable of mercy and wrath, love and neglect, judgment and folly. In his story, you see the height of divine power, the breadth of human-like emotion, and the raw, uncontainable force of the sky itself. And as we drift further into the myths of Olympus tonight, remember, the storms, the lightning, and the passions of Zeus are not just ancient tales. They are echoes of what it means to hold power, to feel deeply, and to be alive, even if you are a god.
Hera, queen of vengeance and marriage. Even among gods, some names carry weight the moment they are spoken. Hera, queen of Olympus, goddess of marriage, family, and childbirth, and the one whose gaze could pierce the bravest of mortals. Good evening, friends, and settle in as we step closer to her story, for it is one of dignity, wrath, and paradox, a tale that moves like a river, both gentle and unrelenting. If Zeus was the sky, Hera was the storm waiting just beneath the horizon, powerful in ways subtle and terrible alike. Hera was not merely a background character in Zeus's sprawling, chaotic existence. She was central to the divine narrative, a force in her own right. Born from the Titans Cronus and Rhea, she was older, wiser, and infinitely patient, though those qualities did not make her meek. Her marriage to Zeus, her brother and the king of gods, was meant to embody the ideal of divine union, the perfection of cosmic harmony. And yet, reality had a taste for drama. Zeus, as we know, was hardly the model of loyalty. His appetite for transformation, seduction, and distraction was legendary, and Hera bore the weight of his whims with a dignity tempered by fire. She did not merely observe, she acted, and her actions were formidable. Hera's vengeance is perhaps what history remembers most vividly, though it is unfair to define her solely by wrath. When Zeus pursued a mortal or immortal woman, when he defied the bounds of sacred law in pursuit of desire, Hera's response was immediate, intricate, and often devastating. She would curse, transform, or pursue retribution across years and sometimes decades. One woman might wake to find herself a cow, another curse to repeat only the echoes of her own words, and infants, the children of Zeus's indiscretions, occasionally found themselves the targets of divine punishment. The tales of her anger are as varied as they are relentless, a reminder that Olympian life is not simply governed by power, but by principle. Hera's principle, exacted with precision and an artist's attention to cruelty. Yet her story is not merely one of wrath. Hera was a protector as well, a guardian of women in childbirth, an overseer of marital fidelity, and a goddess who upheld sacred oaths with a consistency that few could rival. Her temple stretched across the Greek world. Cities such as Argos, Samos, and Tiryns built altars in her honor, dedicating entire festivals to appease her, to invite her favor, to avoid her displeasure. These rituals were not symbolic only. They were the lifeblood of civilizations dependent on her protection and her approval. For Hera's divine power was not abstract. It was functional, tangible, and omnipresent. The paradox of Hera lies in her duality. She could be merciful, kind, and just, yet also merciless, vindictive, and terrifying. She was the goddess you prayed to when your marriage was harmonious and faithful, and the one who might send plagues or misfortune when it was not. In a world where the king of gods could reshape reality at whim, Hera stood as a reminder that authority could be measured not just in force, but in morality, principle, and adherence to sacred laws. Her actions, often cruel to some, were guided by a consistent sense of cosmic justice that even Zeus himself could not fully undermine.
Hera's intelligence and cunning were as much her weapons as her divine might. She understood human psychology, anticipating reactions, weaving schemes and orchestrating interventions that could span generations. Mortals, demigods, and even fellow immortals learned quickly that crossing Hera carried consequences beyond imagination. She was patient, yet exacting, subtle, yet unmistakable, a force of nature that could be gentle like a nurturing breeze or fierce like a hurricane tearing across the sea. And yet, in the quiet moments, Hera embodied all that her office represented. She nurtured, guided, and upheld domestic and divine order. She embodied the sanctity of marriage not as an abstract ideal, but as a lived experience, one fraught with challenges, but one that could be honored, celebrated, and defended. Her festivals, her prayers, and her rituals reminded mortals and immortals alike that life, family, and fidelity are worth guarding, even in a world ruled by chaos. Hera's relationship with Zeus was a study in contrasts. Where he was impulsive, she was calculated. Where he was tempestuous, she was steady. Where he was indulgent, she was disciplined. Their interactions were legendary, full of tension, conflict, but also a strange, abiding necessity. Zeus needed Hera's presence, even if he ignored her counsel. Hera needed the cosmic stage of Olympus to exercise her will, her judgment, and her principles. Together they maintained a balance, fragile, contentious, and yet essential, that allowed the universe to continue in relative order. Beyond Olympus, Hera's influence extended to the mortal realm in ways that shaped entire cultures. She was the deity invoked before childbirth, before marriage, before critical oaths and pledges. Families, kings, and warriors alike acknowledged her power, and her favor could tip the scales of fate in unexpected ways. Her stories interweave with human history, creating a tapestry in which divine and mortal interests are perpetually entangled, producing consequences that echo across generations. Her wrath was legendary, yes, but her legacy was far richer than vengeance alone. Hera taught the world that patience and strategy can rival brute strength, that principles matter even when power tempts one to ignore them, and that morality can survive even in a cosmos dominated by capricious gods. In her story, we see both the challenges and the triumphs of upholding order, protecting the vulnerable, and asserting authority in a world where chaos is the norm. In the end, Hera's presence on Olympus is inseparable from her narrative of strength, resilience, and paradox. She is a goddess of contradictions, embodying both the wrathful storm and the protective hearth. She is queen, mother, judge, and avenger. And as we drift through her stories tonight, through her cunning, her anger, her wisdom, and her protection, we see reflected a truth as relevant now as it was in ancient Greece. Power without principle is dangerous, but principle without power is powerless. Hera wields both, and in doing so, she shapes not only the heavens, but the very patterns of fate and life on earth.
Poseidon, god of the sea and storms. Good evening again, friends. Now let's descend from the heights of Olympus into the vast, unpredictable domain of the oceans, where waves crash like applause and storms roar with a voice older than time. This is Poseidon's world, king of the seas, lord of earthquakes, master of horses, and one of the three brothers who divided the cosmos like a cosmic inheritance. If Zeus rules the skies, and Hades reigns in the underworld, Poseidon commands the waters, a realm as beautiful as it is deadly, as generous as it is capricious. Poseidon was not born mild. Even as a godling, he embodied energy, motion,
and the restless spirit of the ocean itself. He inherited more than the sea. He inherited unpredictability. The earth quakes at his anger, and ships flounder or flourish depending on his whims. Sailors, fishermen, and coastal cities all learned quickly that offerings, prayers, and sacrifices were not mere superstition but a survival strategy. To honor Poseidon was to hope for calm seas. To anger him was to court disaster. And yet, his temperament was not cruel for cruelty's sake. He reflected the duality of water itself, life-giving, nourishing, playful, yet capable of annihilation. His weapon, the trident, was more than a tool. It was a symbol of absolute control and divine rage. One strike could split the earth, summon towering waves, or shatter entire coastlines, and Poseidon wielded it with the skill of an artisan and the unpredictability of a storm. Cities and civilizations, aware of this power, often negotiated, bargained, and even bribed the sea god, seeking safe passage, bountiful catches, or favorable tides. Yet, despite his fury, he could also sculpt islands, fill rivers, and shape the landscapes in ways that seemed almost gentle, almost playful, until, of course, a sudden storm reminded all who watched that his mercy was never guaranteed. Poseidon's relationships were as fluid as his dominion. He pursued nymphs, goddesses, and mortal women alike, often leaving behind a trail of divine offspring, some destined for greatness, others caught tragically in the consequences of his caprice. There is a story of Medusa, whose transformation into a monster he unwittingly set into motion, a tale that intertwines vengeance, beauty, and misfortune. His romantic exploits were not merely whimsical. They had consequences that rippled across myths, intertwining with heroes, demigods, and even the fates of entire cities. Yet Poseidon was not merely a destructive force of nature. He was also a protector. Mariners prayed for safe passage. Warriors sought his blessing for naval battles, and cities petitioned him for protection against natural disasters. His favor was tangible: calm seas, fertile lands near the coast, and abundant catches. His anger was equally tangible: storms, earthquakes, shipwrecks, and flooding. He was the living embodiment of the ocean's duality: generous and destructive, playful and fearsome. The god of the sea also maintained relationships with other deities that were as tumultuous as the waters he ruled. Alliances, rivalries, and grudges formed, often spilling over into mortal affairs. He was capable of collaboration with his brothers, Zeus and Hades, yet also of discord when ambitions clashed. Through these dynamics, Poseidon shaped the divine narrative of Olympus, reminding both gods and mortals that power was never simple, authority never absolute, and the balance between worlds perpetually precarious. Poseidon's temperament reflected the ocean itself, sometimes a gentle caress, sometimes a catastrophic deluge. In mythology, he mirrors human emotions magnified: jealousy, love, rage, pride, but with the ability to literally reshape landscapes and lives. In stories where ships are lost, fields are flooded, or monsters rise from the deep, one witnesses the raw, untamed essence of Poseidon. He was not merely a god of destruction. He was a god of life, creativity, and movement, as vital to the world as the seas themselves. And yet, through all the chaos, there was a rhythm, a pulse that tied Poseidon to the cosmos. The waves, the tides, the storms, and the calm reflected the cycles of life, of fortune and misfortune, of human ambition and humility. Mortals and gods alike learn to respect this rhythm, to honor the unpredictable, to recognize that in Poseidon's hands the world could be shaped and reshaped, at once terrifyingly merciless and breathtakingly magnificent. Poseidon is a study in contradictions, destructive yet protective, passionate yet distant, unpredictable yet bound by law. He is a god whose domain mirrors the duality of life itself, and whose influence continues to ripple through myth, art, and human imagination. And as we drift tonight, listening to the echoes of waves and the whispers of the deep, we sense in Poseidon not just a ruler of seas, but a reflection of the restless, unpredictable, magnificent currents that flow through life, through story, and through our dreams. Good evening, friends. Now let's descend into the shadowed depths, to a place where the sun never shines, where silence reigns, and where the echoes of eternity whisper in the darkness. This is the realm of Hades, god of the underworld, ruler of those who have crossed the threshold of life and entered a domain beyond mortal reckoning. Unlike his brothers Zeus and Poseidon, Hades did not command storms or rule the skies. His authority was quiet, unwavering, and absolute. While the world above celebrated, feared, and prayed to the gods of the living, Hades maintained the rhythm of eternity, ensuring that death, judgment, and the afterlife followed their prescribed course. Hades' story begins, like all the Olympians, with Cronus and Rhea, but his path diverged sharply from his brothers. Whereas Zeus claimed the sky and Poseidon the seas, Hades drew the lot for the underworld, a realm many would call grim, but one that he ruled with stoic diligence and brooding patience. It was not a punishment, though mortals might see it so. Hades was entrusted with the ultimate responsibility, the care of souls, the enforcement of justice in death, and the maintenance of a realm that balanced punishment, reward, and the inescapable passage of time. The underworld was vast, layered, and complex. There was Elysium, a paradise for heroes and the virtuous, the Asphodel Meadows, a quiet gray expanse for ordinary souls, and Tartarus, a deep pit of torment for the wickedest among mortals and even some titans. Hades ensured that each soul received its rightful place, its proper treatment, and that the boundaries between life and death remained unbroken. It was meticulous work, the kind that would exhaust any mortal mind, yet Hades performed it endlessly, day after day, century after century, with a grim efficiency that even the other gods quietly respected. Hades' temperament was far removed from the capriciousness of Zeus or the volatility of Poseidon. He was reserved, patient, and rarely swayed by emotion. Yet beneath his stoic exterior lay a depth of feeling, a capacity for loyalty, and an understanding of human and divine nature that few could match. He did not need displays of power, thunderbolts, or storms to assert his authority. His domain was immutable, his word final, his presence inevitable. Mortals might fear him, poets might call him dark and merciless, but the truth was more nuanced. Hades was the ultimate custodian of cosmic order, ensuring that death, inevitable, impartial, and universal, remained a force of structure rather than chaos. And then there was Persephone, the story that human storytellers love to whisper, sometimes romanticized, sometimes terrifying. Hades, in one of the most enduring myths, abducted Persephone, daughter of Demeter, and brought her to his shadowed kingdom. At first glance, it is a tale of fear and imbalance. Yet the relationship they forged over time was strange, functional, and in its own way stable. Persephone split her time between the underworld and the world above, bringing life, fertility, and seasonal change wherever she went. Her presence in the underworld softened Hades's realm, introducing cycles of light and renewal, while reinforcing the essential truth that even the darkest places can carry life, hope, and balance. Hades's authority extended far beyond his palace of obsidian halls and shadowed rivers. He wielded Cerberus, the three-headed dog, not as a weapon of cruelty, but as a guardian, ensuring that no soul left without permission. He oversaw rivers like Styx, Acheron, and Lethe, channels that carried the dead and at times tested the living. He enforced laws older than Olympus itself, punishing deceit, hubris, and the transgression of natural order. Yet he also offered protection, sanctuary, and the quiet dignity that comes from order maintained. Despite his isolation from mortal society, Hades's influence reached every life. Farmers, rulers, and citizens honored him with rituals, prayers, and offerings, knowing that life and death are intertwined, and that no matter how mighty the living, they too would one day answer to his judgment. Hades's work ensured that the balance between existence and the beyond remained intact, that mortals understood the limits of power, and that the natural cycles of life and death could continue without disruption. Yet Hades was not unfeeling, nor devoid of character. He was capable of love, loyalty, and even a subtle humor, though often expressed in dry, understated ways. His devotion to Persephone, for example, shows a side of the god rarely glimpsed, one that values partnership, trust, and the complexity of relationships. Together they ruled the underworld, maintaining a delicate balance between justice, mercy, and the immutable laws of fate. It was not romance in the mortal sense, but a functional, enduring companionship, reflecting Hades's deep understanding of order, necessity, and the quiet power of consistency. Hades also possessed wisdom few gods could rival. He understood human nature, divine politics, and the subtleties of cause and consequence. Unlike Zeus, whose power is visible in storms and displays, or Poseidon, whose influence crashes in waves, Hades's authority is subtle, embedded in the certainty of death itself. He is not a god to be flattered or angered lightly. His judgments are inexorable, his patience eternal, his presence always felt in the shadows, in the silence between heartbeats, and in the inevitable truth that all things must end. In mythology, Hades is often cast as dark, grim, or frightening, but this is a simplification. He is not evil. He is necessary. Without him, life itself would lack boundaries, chaos would reign, and the delicate balance of mortal and immortal affairs would collapse. He teaches that even power, absolute and eternal, can be exercised with precision, dignity, and a sense of duty. He demonstrates that responsibility often carries isolation, that justice requires patience, and that true authority can exist quietly without the spectacle of thunder or the rage of storms. As we linger in his realm tonight, let us see Hades not as a villain, but as a custodian, a steady force amidst the drama of gods, a reminder that even the darkest places have their own order, purpose, and quiet beauty. The underworld is his stage, eternity his domain, And yet, within this shadow, he embodies the profound, sometimes overlooked lesson that life, death, and the cycles in between are sacred, inescapable, and under the watch of a God both impartial and deeply alive. Hades is a paradox, quiet yet commanding, isolated yet deeply involved in mortal fate, dark yet sustaining. In his story we learn that power is not always loud, authority not always visible, and the work of maintaining balance, whether over life, death, or the underworld itself, is both the heaviest burden and the most enduring legacy a god can bear. And tonight, as you drift through these myths, let Hades' presence linger, not as fear, but as understanding, that even in shadow there is order.
Now let us walk among the fields, where the golden wheat sways in the breeze, where orchards glisten with ripening fruit, and where the pulse of the earth itself seems to beat in rhythm with a divine hand. This is the domain of Demeter, goddess of the harvest, of fertility, and of the cycles of life itself. And alongside her, the story of Persephone, whose journey between worlds reminds us that even death, loss, and separation can carry the promise of renewal. Demeter is older than most, patient and nurturing, a goddess whose touch shapes the very sustenance of human life. Crops rise and fall, seasons shift, and communities flourish, all under her gaze. Her presence is gentle, yet commanding. Without her, fields would wither, rivers dry, and the fragile bond between humans and the earth would crumble. Farmers, kings, and families alike understood that Demeter's favor was not abstract. Offerings, festivals, and prayers were a matter of survival, a recognition that she controlled the delicate threads by which life hung in balance. Her story, however, is inseparable from that of Persephone, her daughter, whose fate would forever change the rhythm of the seasons. Persephone, bright, curious, and full of life, wandered through meadows and groves with innocence and wonder. But the world of gods is not free from ambition, and it was Hades, god of the underworld, who saw in her a companion, a queen, and a force to share his shadowed kingdom. In one of the most famous myths, he abducted Persephone, carrying her to the underworld. The act itself is jarring, frightening even, yet within it lies the seed of transformation, a cycle that would forever link mother, daughter, earth, and underworld in ways both tragic and beautiful. Demeter's grief was immense. She wandered the earth, searching, mourning, and refusing to let the land bear fruit until her daughter was returned. Crops failed, rivers ran dry, and famine threatened mortals everywhere. The worlds trembled under her sorrow, for she was not merely a grieving mother, she was the embodiment of life's essential sustenance. Her tears became the rivers, her anguish the barrenness of winter, and her desire for reunion the fertile awakening of spring. Every failing harvest, every withered tree, every empty field bore witness to her profound influence. Yet even in despair, Demeter's power is awe-inspiring. She negotiated with Zeus himself, invoking divine law, maternal authority, and cosmic balance. And from this negotiation arose a compromise. Persephone would spend half the year with Hades in the underworld and half the year on earth with Demeter. From this arrangement, the rhythm of the seasons was born. Spring emerged with Persephone's return, summer and early autumn flourished under her mother's hand, and fall into winter arrived when the daughter once more descended into shadow. Humanity learned to understand time, patience, and the inevitability of change through this cycle, and every planting,
harvest, and celebration became a subtle acknowledgement of these divine rhythms. Persephone herself was transformed by her journey. She became both maiden and queen, light and shadow, embodying duality and resilience. In the underworld, she exercised authority, learning to navigate the balance of justice, mercy, and governance. On earth, she returned as the bright daughter of Demeter, a reminder of life, growth, and vitality. Her story speaks to the human condition, the necessity of separation, the inevitability of change, and the capacity for renewal even after loss. She is the bridge between worlds, the living testimony that cycles are essential, that endings contain beginnings, and that life itself is a story of continuous transformation. The bond between Demeter and Persephone also reflects the profound connection between mother and child, protector and protege, nurturer and the nurtured. Through their interactions, mortals learned the importance of empathy, patience, and stewardship of the earth. Their myths provided not only explanations for natural phenomena, but also moral and cultural frameworks for understanding life, loss, and renewal. Festivals such as the Thesmophoria celebrated these principles, allowing women, farmers, and communities to honor their power and reflect on the delicate balance that sustains life. Demeter's influence extended beyond fields and orchards. She shaped the very understanding of mortality and fertility, teaching humanity that life and death, abundance and scarcity, joy and sorrow are inseparable threads in the same tapestry. Through her sorrow, she demonstrated the importance of empathy and engagement with the world. Through her power, she taught that life is maintained by care, effort, and respect for the forces beyond human control. In this way, she mirrors the duality of all gods, compassionate yet exacting, nurturing yet capable of profound disruption when wronged or ignored. And Persephone, as the queen of the underworld and daughter of the harvest, embodies a truth that resonates even today, that balance is essential, that the cycles of life must be honored, and that even in the darkest moments there is the potential for renewal. Her story teaches patience, resilience, and the inevitability of change, lessons as timeless as the seasons themselves. Together, mother and daughter form a narrative of harmony and tension, light and shadow, growth and decay, reminding us that even in myth there is wisdom, beauty, and the quiet, enduring rhythm of nature. Their story is also deeply human, despite its divine context. Grief, love, longing, negotiation, and reconciliation are all present, scaled to cosmic proportions but fundamentally relatable. Demeter and Persephone reveal that even gods experience profound emotion, and that the consequences of their actions ripple through the lives of mortals in ways both seen and unseen. It is a mythology that is intimate, expansive, and endless instructive, offering comfort and reflection, particularly for those who pause to consider the cycles of their own lives in parallel with the seasons. As the golden fields sway and the first frost of winter threatens, we see in Demeter and Persephone the quiet power of the earth itself, its rhythms, and its lessons. The goddess of harvest ensures life continues, while her daughter, moving between worlds, reminds us of impermanence and renewal. Together, they form one of the most enduring narratives of Greek mythology, a story that teaches reverence, patience, and understanding, and gently prepares our minds for rest, reflection, and the quiet, inexorable passage of time under the guidance of these extraordinary.
Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. Now let us ascend once more to Olympus, but not to the tempestuous heights of Zeus or the vengeful presence of Hera. Tonight we enter the world of Athena, goddess of wisdom, strategy, and war. A deity whose mind is as sharp as the blade she wields, whose presence inspires both awe and fear, and whose influence shapes cities, battles, and the very course of human history. Athena did not arrive like many gods, born of simple union. She sprang fully formed from the head of Zeus, clad in armor, radiant with intellect, and commanding attention from the very first moment. This extraordinary birth was a signal. Athena's realm was not limited to traditional divine influence, but extended into strategy, reasoning, and the intricate dance of mortal and immortal affairs. From the outset, she embodied both logic and power, a combination that would make her one of the most revered and feared figures in Greek mythology. Her personality is a study of contrasts. She is fierce, yet rational, strategic, yet compassionate, a warrior with a mind that values foresight over brute strength. Where Ares thrives in chaos, Athena dominates through preparation, understanding, and discipline. Mortals and gods alike learned to respect her judgment, for she did not act impulsively. Her interventions were calculated, deliberate, and often decisive, influencing the outcomes of wars, the founding of cities, and the shaping of human civilization itself. Her domain spans both wisdom and war, an unusual but powerful combination. She taught mortals the arts of governance, craft, and strategy, showing that intelligence and preparation can triumph over sheer force. Cities, most notably Athens, bear her name and her mark. She offered the olive tree to the city, a symbol of peace, prosperity, and sustenance, and in doing so, she demonstrated the values she embodies: foresight, practicality, and long-term thinking. Her gifts were not mere favors, they were lessons, tools for survival and advancement, and testament to her enduring influence over both human and divine realms. Despite her intellect and power, Athena was deeply connected to human experience. She valued courage, skill, and honor, rewarding those who demonstrated wisdom and integrity. Heroes such as Odysseus and Perseus found guidance, inspiration, and assistance from her, for she recognized potential, nurtured talent, and intervened to ensure that justice and skill were duly rewarded. Her mentorship was as much about fostering responsibility as it was about providing aid. She shaped not just destinies, but the character and moral fiber of those she assisted. Athena's approach to warfare is equally remarkable. Unlike gods who act on passion or emotion, she embodies strategic warfare, the planning, the foresight, the orchestration of movements, and the anticipation of consequences. She fights with precision, leading armies with intellect rather than rage, emphasizing defense, wisdom, and careful judgment over sheer destruction. Her shield, the Aegis, is both a weapon and a symbol of her protective nature, a reminder that strength tempered by strategy can prevent chaos and preserve life even amidst conflict. Her relationship with other gods is defined by respect and occasional rivalry. She advises Zeus, challenges Ares, and maintains balance among the Olympians, often acting as the voice of reason when passions threaten to overwhelm logic. Athena embodies equilibrium, the bridge between raw divine power and human potential, the intermediary who ensures that knowledge, judgment, and planning shape outcomes as much as strength and impulse. Athena is also fiercely independent. Unlike many gods, whose narratives are defined by romantic entanglements, she remains a virgin goddess, dedicating herself entirely to wisdom, craft, and protection. This choice underscores her autonomy, her focus, and the clarity of purpose that defines her every action. She is a model of disciplined energy, a goddess whose priorities lie in the cultivation of skill, understanding, and justice rather than personal desire or indulgence. Her influence extends far beyond warfare and wisdom. She inspires architects, artisans, and lawmakers, shaping civilizations through culture, law, and infrastructure. Her guidance allows cities to flourish, heroes to succeed, and societies to endure. Festivals, temples, and statues dedicated to her reflect humanity's recognition of intellect as a force as powerful as any weapon, and wisdom as vital as any army. Athena's story also teaches the importance of balance, strength guided by reason, action informed by foresight, and authority tempered by fairness. She is a god who embodies both the mind and the sword, demonstrating that true power is measured not by domination alone, but by the capacity to guide, protect, and cultivate growth. Her wisdom is not aloof. It is active, practical, and intimately tied to the well-being of those under her guidance. Even as we explore myths and legends, Athena's presence resonates with timeless relevance. She embodies qualities that societies across ages admire: intelligence, courage, justice, and vision. She represents the possibility of mastering oneself, shaping one's environment, and achieving greatness through discipline and understanding. In her we see not just the power of a deity, but the potential of human aspiration amplified and protected by divine guidance. And as we drift into the quiet of tonight, let Athena's presence linger in your mind, a reminder that clarity of thought, strategic action, and moral integrity can navigate even the most turbulent waters of life. She is a goddess of balance, foresight, and wisdom, a protector of mortals, a guide to heroes, and a beacon of intellect in a world often dominated by chaos. In her story, we find lessons that echo through time, whispers of strategy, insight, and resilience that drift gently into our minds, shaping dreams, contemplation, and the quiet rhythm of thought.
Ares, god of war. Now let us descend into the raw, unfiltered chaos of battle, where clashing swords echo like thunder and the cries of warriors reverberate across the plains. This is the domain of Ares, god of war, the embodiment of bloodshed, conflict, and the untamed fury that pulses through the heart of combat. Unlike Athena, whose strategy guides armies to victory, Ares thrives in the heat of battle itself, the raw, immediate, and sometimes senseless violence that defines the nature of war. Ares' story is a study in contradiction. He is powerful, fearless, and unyielding, yet often reckless and impetuous. The son of Zeus and Hera, he embodies the primal energy of conflict, the kind that surges through soldiers' veins, ignites passions, and drives both mortals and immortals to extremes. His presence on the battlefield is magnetic and terrifying. The ground shakes, the air thrums with tension, and even the bravest warriors feel the surge of adrenaline and fear when he appears. Unlike his sister Athena, Ares rarely considers tactics or consequences. He is instinctual, passionate, and immediate, a force of nature in motion. Wars erupt where he lingers, conflicts escalate under his gaze, and armies are driven by the intoxicating combination of courage, bloodlust,
and divine intervention. Mortals both fear and honor him, for to invoke Ares is to invite power, but also chaos. To gain his favor is to risk becoming swept away in the storm of combat. Ares' relationships with other gods are often strained, particularly with Athena, where she embodies calculated strategy and measured judgment. He represents the emotional, impulsive, and destructive side of war. Their differences highlight the duality of battle: brains versus brawn, planning versus instinct, restraint versus ferocity. Yet even in opposition, Ares' presence is essential, for every civilization requires both strategy and raw courage. Every hero needs both foresight and the willingness to embrace risk. Despite his reputation for savagery, Ares is not without complexity. He inspires bravery, challenges cowardice, and compels mortals to confront their own limits. Heroes like Achilles and Diomedes were influenced by his favor, gaining the courage and martial prowess needed to shape myths, histories, and epic tales. Even when his interventions lead to destruction, they are not meaningless. They test resilience, forge character, and reveal the profound realities of mortality, ambition, and human courage. Ares' love life mirrors his tempestuous nature. He is famously involved with Aphrodite, the goddess of love, a union that juxtaposes the brutal with the beautiful. Their relationship is passionate, scandalous, and full of intrigue, reflecting the interconnectedness of desire and conflict, attraction and chaos. In their story, we see that even gods embody human emotions magnified: love, jealousy, rivalry, and longing, all intensified by divine power and mythic consequence. His presence on Olympus, while often resented, is a reminder that war, conflict, and courage are essential parts of both mortal and divine existence. Even in peace, the potential for conflict shapes decisions, relationships, and events, and Ares embodies the understanding that strength, aggression, and passion cannot be ignored. He is not merely a destructive force. He is a catalyst, a test, a reflection of the raw energies that drive life itself. Mortals honored Ares through sacrifices, festivals, and temples, particularly in times of war. Cities like Sparta revered him, embodying his principles of courage, discipline, and martial skill. But worshipping Ares required respect for the uncontrollable nature of war. To invoke him was to accept the uncertainty, risk, and sometimes devastation that comes with conflict. He is not a god to be tamed, negotiated with, or reasoned around. He is a force to be recognized, respected, and endured. Ares also teaches subtle lessons, often overlooked beneath his reputation for violence. Through his myths, we learn the importance of courage in adversity, the value of confronting challenges directly, and the necessity of acknowledging the darker, more primal aspects of existence. He embodies the truth that strength without courage is useless, and courage without direction can be destructive, a duality mirrored in countless human experiences across time. Even in defeat, Ares' influence is felt. Losses on the battlefield, mistakes made in combat, and failures of strategy are all amplified under his gaze, showing mortals and gods alike that understanding, resilience, and adaptation are essential. He is not merely the embodiment of victory, but of the totality of war: the strategy, the fury, the chaos, the courage, and the consequences that ripple far beyond the battlefield. Ares' temperament is legendary, hot-blooded, impulsive, and easily provoked. Yet beneath the aggression lies energy, vitality, and a force that drives civilization forward. Conflict, while feared, compels growth, change, and innovation. Mortals survive because of courage inspired by him. Heroes rise because of the challenges he presents. Societies endure because they learn to navigate the storms of conflict he represents. In this way, Ares is both feared and necessary, a reminder that struggle is inherent to life, that courage is forged in adversity, and that even in chaos there is purpose, and even in fury there is energy that can shape destinies. Ares is timeless, the pulse of battle, the roar of courage, the test of strength, and the reminder that even in chaos there is purpose, and even in fury there is energy that can shape destinies. As the echoes of his stories fade into the night, let them carry lessons of bravery, the inevitability of challenge, and the quiet understanding that within struggle lies growth, within conflict lies clarity, and within the god of war himself lies the reflection of our most primal, essential, and human instincts.
Apollo, god of the sun, music, and prophecy. Now let us step into the radiant light, where the first golden rays of the sun touch the earth, where music drifts through the air like a gentle current, and where the whispers of the future shimmer in the air like morning dew. This is the realm of Apollo, god of the sun, music, poetry, healing, and prophecy. A deity whose presence illuminates both the heavens and the minds of mortals, guiding, inspiring, and occasionally warning those who dare to listen. Apollo is the embodiment of harmony, balance, and radiant energy. Born of Zeus and Leto, and twin to the mysterious Artemis, he arrived in the world with a brilliance that demanded attention. From the first, he was associated with light, both literal and metaphorical, shining in a world often darkened by fear, ignorance, and chaos. He is a god whose influence spans the physical, the intellectual, and the spiritual, merging beauty, wisdom, and power into a single compelling force. One of Apollo's most enduring roles is that of the sun god, the radiant charioteer who drives the golden sun across the sky each day. His passage illuminates the world, casting shadows, highlighting details, and revealing truth. It is a symbolic and literal light, a reminder that clarity, insight, and knowledge are essential to life. Mortals learn to honor him for the regularity of his journey, understanding that the sun's rise and fall is not merely a natural phenomenon, but a reflection of divine order and celestial precision. Apollo is also the god of music and poetry. His lyre, crafted by Hermes, produces melodies that enchant gods, mortals, and nature itself. Through music, he conveys emotion, memory, and inspiration, shaping culture and civilization alike. Poets, musicians, and artists have long found in Apollo both a muse and a model, a reminder that creativity and intellect are gifts that connect humans to the divine. His influence encourages reflection, expression, and the pursuit of beauty, elevating the mundane into something transcendent. But Apollo is not merely a gentle, artistic presence. He is a god of prophecy, wielding insight into the future and a profound understanding of cause and consequence. At Delphi, mortals sought his guidance through the Pythia, the oracle whose words, inspired by the god, shaped decisions, alliances, and destinies. Apollo's gift of foresight is both a blessing and a burden, revealing the inevitability of fate while reminding mortals of the weight of choice. Those who consult him are confronted with truths both illuminating and unsettling, learning that knowledge is power, but also responsibility. Apollo's duality extends to healing and plague. He brings vitality, cures sickness, and restores balance, yet he can also release disease and punishment when mortals or communities overstep divine boundaries.
His arrows are not merely instruments of war, but tools of justice, fate, and correction, teaching that power carries accountability. Mortals respect, fear, and honor him, understanding that his gifts, like his wrath, are precise, measured, and deeply consequential. In love and relationships, Apollo is equally complex. He pursues mortals, nymphs, and goddesses with passion and persistence, yet his affections are often unfulfilled or tinged with tragedy. Stories of Daphne, Hyacinthus, and Coronis reveal a god whose intensity is as overwhelming as his brilliance, highlighting both the beauty and danger of divine desire. His pursuit can inspire greatness, awaken creativity, or catalyze transformation, but it also carries loss, sorrow, and the inevitability of change. Apollo's connection to other gods is profound. He is a bridge between mortal and immortal concerns, mediating disputes, advising his father Zeus, and collaborating with deities across domains. His influence balances the passions of Ares, the wisdom of Athena, and the discipline of Artemis, demonstrating that insight, creativity, and foresight are as vital as strength, strategy, and courage. In Olympus, Apollo embodies equilibrium, reminding gods and mortals alike that intelligence, vision, and artistry are essential to harmony and order. Mortals worshipped Apollo with music, poetry, athletic contests, and sacred rituals. Cities such as Delphi and Delos became centers of devotion, where temples, festivals, and oracles honored his multifaceted power. In these spaces, humanity learned to engage with intellect, art, and the divine, understanding that life's highest pursuits, truth, beauty, and understanding, are guided by the steady, radiant hand of Apollo. Apollo embodies clarity of mind and spirit. He reveals hidden truths, exposes deceit, and illuminates paths that mortals might overlook. His presence encourages reflection, introspection, and moral courage. In stories where heroes seek guidance or confront fate, Apollo provides wisdom that is both practical and profound, teaching that insight, when applied, can avert disaster, cultivate growth, and elevate human experience. Yet Apollo is not infallible. His passions, rivalries, and emotional intensity remind us that even gods contain human-like flaws. His jealousy, pride, and moments of impulsive action highlight the complexity of divinity and the interplay of power, desire, and responsibility. In these narratives, we see a God who is vibrant, dynamic, and deeply relatable, even as he remains magnificent, radiant, and beyond mortal comprehension. As the sun sets tonight, casting long shadows across the earth, let Apollo's presence linger in your mind. Hear the gentle strumming of his lyre, feel the warmth of his light, and sense the quiet wisdom that guides both the cosmos and human life. He embodies illumination, understanding, creativity, and foresight, qualities that, when embraced, inspire dreams, reflection, and the courage to navigate the complexities of life. Apollo is timeless, the radiant sun, the master of music, the prophet of fate, and the healer of both body and soul. His story teaches that illumination is essential, that knowledge is responsibility, and that beauty, when paired with insight, can transform not only the world, but the heart and mind of every listener. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, let Apollo's light warm your imagination, inspire your thoughts, and guide you through both dreams and waking life with wisdom, clarity, and the gentle rhythm of divine illumination.
Artemis, goddess of the hunt, moon, and wilderness. We wander into the silent forests, where the silver moonlight filters through ancient trees, where the rustle of leaves and the whisper of animals mark the rhythm of life, and where the untouched wild stretches in endless, mysterious beauty. This is the domain of Artemis, goddess of the hunt, protector of wildlife, the moon, and young women. She embodies independence, precision, and the fierce guardianship of nature and innocence. A goddess whose presence commands both awe and reverence. Artemis is the twin sister of Apollo, yet she contrasts him in profound ways. While Apollo illuminates the world with sun, music, and prophecy, Artemis guides it with shadow, stealth, and intuition. She is the embodiment of the untamed, the wild, and the sacred balance of life untouched by human greed or ignorance. Her bow is precise, her arrows swift, and her judgment swift yet measured, reflecting the delicate equilibrium she maintains between life and death in the natural world. From birth, Artemis was extraordinary. She claimed autonomy even as a child, asking her father Zeus for eternal virginity and the freedom to roam the forests and mountains untouched by mortal demands or divine interference. Her wishes were granted, and from that moment she became the eternal huntress, a deity of freedom, discipline, and formidable skill. She is the protector of the vulnerable, guardian of children, and champion of women, emphasizing self-reliance, resilience, and the sacred connection between humans and the natural world. Artemis's personality is a fascinating blend of ferocity and compassion. On one hand, she is relentless in pursuit of her prey, a goddess who respects the laws of nature and punishes those who transgress divine or natural boundaries. On the other, she nurtures life, safeguarding the young, aiding childbirth, and ensuring that the cycles of the wild continue in harmony. She embodies the duality of destruction and preservation, teaching that death in the natural order is as sacred as the life it sustains. Her realm is not limited to forests and wilderness. Artemis is also closely associated with the moon, the silvery light that reflects the hidden rhythms of life, illuminating mysteries without exposing them entirely. Through her lunar influence, she governs cycles, intuition, and the subtle forces that shape existence. While Apollo commands clarity and illumination, Artemis presides over subtlety, reflection, and the understanding that much of life's power lies beneath the surface in quiet observation, patience, and respect for the unseen. In mythology, Artemis's actions are often dramatic, showcasing her uncompromising sense of justice and protection. She punishes those who harm the innocent or disrespect sacred boundaries, yet she also shows mercy and guidance to those who honor nature and her principles. From punishing hunters who take more than they need, to protecting nymphs and mortals under her care, her influence reflects the balance of compassion and authority, freedom and discipline. Artemis's relationship with her twin, Apollo, is also significant. Together they represent complementary forces, sun and moon, illumination and shadow, insight and intuition. While Apollo's power shapes civilization and culture, Artemis preserves the wild, ensuring that life outside human dominion remains sacred and balanced. Their connection reminds mortals and gods alike that both light and darkness, order and freedom are essential to existence. Her independence extends beyond her role in nature. Artemis's dedication to virginity and autonomy symbolizes self-determination, agency, and focus. She prioritizes purpose over personal attachment, mission over indulgence, and discipline over distraction. This autonomy gives her freedom to act decisively, uphold justice, and protect those under her care without compromise. In Artemis, we see a model of integrity, self-reliance, and the capacity to lead through example rather than coercion. Mortals honored Artemis with sacrifices, festivals, and rituals, particularly during rites of passage for young women. They sought her protection during childbirth, safety during travel, and guidance in hunting and survival. Her temples and sacred groves became centers of reverence, connecting humanity with the wilderness, the cycles of the moon, and the wisdom inherent in respecting the natural world. In these spaces, humans learned lessons of patience, precision, reverence, and balance, values embodied in Artemis's divine presence. Artemis also demonstrates the power of restraint. She kills only when necessary, hunts only for survival or justice, and wields her bow with unmatched skill and purpose. Her discipline teaches that strength without control is danger, and that wisdom in action comes from understanding the consequences of every choice. Through her myths, we learn that true power lies not in domination, but in mastery of self, in respect for others, and in harmony with the environment. Her guardianship of women is deeply symbolic. She protects innocence, supports growth, and ensures safety during transitions from childhood to adulthood. She teaches young women independence, courage, and the importance of self-respect. In Artemis, we see a reflection of both nurturing and vigilance, a deity who guides while protecting, empowering while observing, and enforcing justice while preserving life. As night falls and the moon rises, let Artemis's presence guide your imagination. Hear the quiet rustle of leaves, see the silver glow of the moon across untouched forests, and feel the calm precision of her bow in the shadows. She embodies independence, vigilance, and balance, a deity whose story reminds us that freedom, respect, and discipline are intertwined, and that the natural world is sacred, delicate, and deserving of reverence. Artemis is timeless, the eternal huntress, guardian of women and wilderness, protector of innocence, and a reflection of nature's cycles and quiet strength. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, let Artemis's silent footsteps echo through your mind, the silver light of the moon guide your thoughts, and the rhythm of the wild soothe your spirit, carrying you into dreams of balance, courage, and quiet mastery.
Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. Good evening, friends. Tonight, let us drift into a world of irresistible allure, where every glance carries the weight of desire, every movement evokes longing, and where the very air shimmers with the magic of attraction. This is the domain of Aphrodite, goddess of love, beauty, and irresistible charm, a deity whose presence shapes hearts, destinies, and even the course of history, reminding us that love is both divine and dangerous, enchanting and unpredictable. Aphrodite's origins are mysterious as the tides she commands. Some myths tell of her birth from the sea foam, rising fully formed and breathtakingly beautiful near the shores of Cyprus. Others claim she is the daughter of Zeus and Dione, born into the world already a force of irresistible power. Either way, her emergence signals a shift, the entrance of a deity whose influence extends into the deepest human emotions, whose touch can ignite passion, inspire art, and even provoke divine conflict. Her beauty is legendary, transcending mortal imagination. Every gesture, every smile, and every movement exudes a hypnotic grace that can sway gods and mortals alike. Aphrodite is not merely decorative. Her allure is power. Empires can be swayed, wars begun, and heroes undone by her charm. She is a goddess who wields attraction as skillfully as a sword, understanding that desire can inspire devotion, provoke jealousy, and reshape destinies. Her influence on mortals is profound. Lovers, poets, and artists seek her favor, hoping to capture even a fraction of her beauty and magnetism. She inspires creation, from the most intimate romance to grand epic tales of passion, longing, and heartbreak. Cities, festivals, and rituals are dedicated to her, celebrating the intensity and inevitability of desire. Through her, humans learn that love is both transformative and unpredictable, a force that can elevate the soul or plunge it into chaos. Yet Aphrodite is not merely a gentle or indulgent goddess. She embodies the duality of love, joy and pain, ecstasy and suffering, attraction and obsession. Her interactions with gods and mortals alike reveal that love is never simple, never neutral. She inspires devotion, yes, but also rivalry, jealousy, and conflict. Stories of mortals and gods ensnared in her influence illustrate the irresistible power of beauty and the unavoidable consequences of desire untempered by reason. Her relationships with gods are intricate and often scandalous. Aphrodite is famously married to Hephaestus, the god of fire and forge, whose skill is unmatched, but whose appearance lacks allure by her standards. Yet she engages in passionate affairs, most notably with Ares, god of war, reflecting the complexity of desire and the tension between passion and obligation. Through these divine interactions, we see love as a force that defies logic, disrupts order, and challenges both mortals and gods to confront the truths of their hearts. Aphrodite's impact extends far beyond romance. She represents attraction, not just physical, but emotional and spiritual, influencing diplomacy, alliances, and even battles. Heroes are inspired by love, wars begin over passion, and civilizations are shaped by the consequences of desire. She is a goddess who reminds us that the deepest motivations often come from the heart, that beauty can inspire creation as well as destruction, and that the power of love is universal, timeless, and unavoidable. Her personality is multifaceted, playful yet commanding, gentle yet fierce, enchanting yet exacting. Aphrodite understands that charm alone can guide choices and shape outcomes, and she wields her beauty with strategic precision. In myth, she is both nurturer and manipulator, muse and catalyst, teaching mortals that love carries responsibility and that desire unchecked can be as perilous as it is transformative. Mortals honor Aphrodite through offerings, temples, and festivals, such as the Aphrodisia, celebrating her gifts and seeking her protection in matters of love, marriage, and beauty. She is invoked for guidance in relationships, for blessings in fertility, and for inspiration in art and creativity. Her presence is a reminder that passion is not merely frivolous. It is a potent, transformative force that shapes human experience in ways both subtle and profound. Even as we consider her divine allure, Aphrodite teaches lessons about balance and consequence. Love without care can destroy, desire without respect can wound, and beauty without wisdom can deceive. She embodies both the blessings and the dangers of attraction, offering insight into the complexity of human emotion and the ethical dimensions of affection, devotion, and obsession. In her story, we see that power and vulnerability are intertwined, and that the forces that move hearts also shape destinies. Aphrodite's story is timeless, echoing across the centuries in literature, art, and human imagination. She embodies the allure of love, the urgency of passion, and the transformative potential of beauty. She reminds mortals and gods alike that life is enriched by emotion, that attraction is powerful, and that relationships, divine or human, are dynamic, unpredictable, and essential to the fabric of existence. As you drift into the quiet of the evening, let Aphrodite's presence linger in your mind. Feel the warmth of attraction, the pull of longing, and the magic of beauty that transcends time. She embodies love's power, complexity, and inevitability, teaching that passion, when respected and understood, can inspire greatness, creativity, and transformation. Her story soothes and excites, comforts and challenges, carrying your thoughts into dreams filled with beauty, emotion, and the eternal rhythm of desire. Aphrodite is timeless, the goddess of love, beauty, and irresistible allure. She teaches that attraction is powerful, that passion is transformative, and that desire is both gift and responsibility. Tonight, as you close your eyes, let the gentle force of her story guide your imagination, awaken your dreams, and remind you that love, in all its forms, is one of the most divine and enduring forces in both myth and life.
Hermes, god of travel, commerce, and trickery. Tonight we wander along winding roads, bustling marketplaces, and shadowed paths where secrets are whispered and adventures begin. This is the domain of Hermes, messenger of the gods, god of travel, commerce, communication, and cunning, a deity whose presence is swift, clever, and endlessly surprising. Hermes embodies movement in all its forms, the motion of feet, the flow of goods, the speed of messages, and the unpredictable currents of wit, strategy, and mischief. Hermes is a figure of duality, playful yet cunning, helpful yet mischievous, fast yet precise. Born to Zeus and the nymph Maya, he was extraordinary even as an infant. Within hours of birth, he invented the lyre, stole Apollo's cattle, and navigated divine trickery with a combination of charm, intelligence, and audacity that left the gods both exasperated and impressed. From the beginning, Hermes demonstrated that speed, cleverness, and adaptability are as powerful as raw strength or authority. As messenger of the gods, Hermes is everywhere and nowhere, moving between Olympus, the mortal world, and even the underworld with unparalleled swiftness. He carries commands, delivers warnings, and ensures communication flows seamlessly across the cosmos. His winged sandals and caduceus symbolize both speed and negotiation, reminding mortals and gods alike that clarity, connection, and diplomacy are essential to survival and success. Hermes is also the god of travelers, guiding them safely across borders, roads, and unknown paths. Merchants and wanderers pray to him for protection, speed, and fortune. His domain is movement, physical, mental, and spiritual, embodying the fluidity of life itself. He encourages exploration, risk-taking, and the pursuit of opportunity, teaching that progress depends on initiative, adaptability, and courage to venture into the unknown. Trickery is perhaps Hermes' most enduring trait. He embodies cleverness, strategy, and improvisation, often outwitting gods and mortals alike. Yet his cunning is rarely malicious. Instead, it reflects intelligence applied creatively, problem-solving in unpredictable situations, and the use of wit to navigate challenges. He steals, deceives, and negotiates, but always with a spark of charm that makes mischief feel exhilarating rather than threatening. Through Hermes, myth teaches the value of intelligence, adaptability, and cleverness in a world governed by rules, authority, and power. Hermes' relationships with other gods reveal his versatility. He assists Zeus, communicates divine will, aids heroes, and even reconciles conflicts among gods. Heroes like Odysseus Perseus, and Bellerophon benefit from his guidance, protection, and cunning, demonstrating that even the most formidable challenges can be overcome with intelligence, agility, and creativity. Hermes' interventions highlight the importance of resourcefulness, initiative, and flexibility in navigating both mortal and divine affairs. Commerce, negotiation, and exchange also fall under Hermes' influence. He is the patron of merchants, trade, and the flow of goods and wealth. Markets, agreements, and contracts are subtly shaped by his presence, reminding humanity that movement, connection, and adaptability are critical to prosperity. He embodies the idea that progress depends not only on labor, but also on innovation, communication, and strategy. Hermes' playful nature extends to his interactions with mortals. He is approachable, mischievous, and dynamic, inspiring creativity, resourcefulness, and courage. Tales of trickery, clever bargains, and daring escapes illustrate his personality, emphasizing that life is as much about ingenuity as it is about effort. His wit is a tool, a weapon, and a bridge, allowing mortals to navigate challenges, solve problems, and experience the thrill of discovery. His role as psychopomp, guide of souls to the underworld, adds a layer of profundity to his character. Beyond mischief and commerce, Hermes navigates death and transition with precision, ensuring that souls reach their destinations safely. He is a bridge between life and death, order and chaos, beginnings and endings, embodying the principle that movement, transition, and passage are fundamental aspects of existence. In this capacity, he balances levity with gravitas, playfulness with responsibility, and speed with wisdom. Hermes teaches enduring lessons. Cleverness matters, movement sustains life, and adaptability ensures survival. His stories encourage exploration, ingenuity, and courage, while reminding mortals that intelligence and creativity are as vital as strength and endurance. Through his stories, we see that wit, speed, and strategy are essential tools in navigating a complex, unpredictable world. Mortals honored Hermes with shrines, roadside altars, and festivals like the Hermaea, seeking his blessing for travel, commerce, communication, and ingenuity. His symbols, the caduceus, winged sandals, and traveler's hat, remind humanity that guidance, clarity, and agility are vital, not only in physical journeys, but in navigating life's emotional, social, and moral paths. Hermes' story resonates because he embodies the principles of movement, cleverness, and opportunity. He teaches that life is rarely static, that fortune favors the adaptable, and that resourcefulness can overcome challenges even greater than strength or authority. His duality, trickster and guide, playful and responsible, mortal ally and divine messenger, makes him endlessly fascinating, relatable, and inspirational. As night falls and journeys continue, let Hermes' presence linger in your imagination. Hear the rustle of his wings, feel the pulse of swift movement, and sense the thrill of cleverness and possibility. He embodies curiosity, adaptability, and ingenuity, inviting mortals and gods alike to embrace cleverness, resourcefulness, and the excitement of exploration. Hermes is timeless, the god of travel, commerce, trickery, and communication. His stories teach that intelligence, agility, and creativity shape destiny as much as power, courage, and strength. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, let Hermes' swift footsteps guide your mind through roads, rivers, and markets of imagination, carrying you into dreams where cleverness, curiosity, and movement illuminate the path ahead. Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and transformation. The air feels a little heavier, the shadows softer, and the world hums with a strange, intoxicating rhythm. Close your eyes and imagine the scent of ripe grapes, the flicker of firelight against laughter, and the gentle pull of music that makes your pulse quicken. We're entering the wild, unpredictable, and endlessly fascinating world of Dionysus, the god of wine, ecstasy, theater, and transformation. A deity who blurs boundaries, breaks conventions, and reminds humanity that chaos and creation often dance hand in hand. Dionysus is not like the other gods of Olympus. While Zeus rules with thunder and Athena with reason, Dionysus rules the heart, wild, emotional, and free. He represents the parts of existence that cannot be contained by law, logic, or order. He is the heartbeat beneath the mask of civilization. Joy and madness intertwined, freedom that teeters between divine inspiration and beautiful destruction. His birth itself was an act of defiance and rebirth. Dionysus was the son of Zeus and the mortal Semele. When Hera, jealous and vengeful, tricked Semele into demanding to see Zeus in his true divine form, the mortal woman was instantly consumed by his radiance. Yet before she perished, Zeus snatched their unborn child and sewed him into his thigh, carrying him until Dionysus was ready to be born again, a god twice born, symbol of transformation, rebirth, and resilience. From the moment of his arrival, Dionysus embodied contradiction, both divine and mortal, both joy and madness. He wandered across lands far from Olympus, teaching mortals the art of winemaking, not merely a gift of indulgence, but a gift of transcendence. Through wine, he offered humanity a way to escape pain, to glimpse divinity, and to dissolve the rigid boundaries of identity and status. Under his influence, kings danced beside peasants, and fear dissolved into euphoria. But Dionysus was more than the god of intoxication. He was the god of ecstasy, from the Greek ekstasis, meaning to stand outside oneself. His festivals, the Dionysia, were not just feasts, but spiritual experiences. Participants lost themselves in music, rhythm, and movement until they transcended individuality and merged into something greater, a collective divine pulse that blurred the line between mortal and God, reality and dream. The god's presence was always accompanied by his followers, the Maenads, wild, ecstatic women who roamed the mountains in trance-like devotion, their eyes filled with divine fire. Clad in ivy and furs, they danced through forests, their cries echoing under moonlight. To outsiders, they appeared dangerous, unhinged, even terrifying. But to those who understood Dionysus's mystery, they represented liberation, the release from repression, fear, and the suffocating weight of control. Dionysus himself could be both kind and terrifying. To those who accepted his gifts, he brought joy, abundance, and creativity. To those who denied him, he brought madness and ruin. Kings who scorned his worship often found their empires undone by chaos and hysteria, their minds unraveling in divine retribution. Through these tales, Dionysus reminds mortals that to reject joy, emotion, and freedom is to invite destruction from within. Suppressed ecstasy always finds a way to break free. One of his most famous tales is that of King Pentheus of Thebes. When Pentheus mocked Dionysus's rites and forbade his worship, the god disguised himself and lured the king to witness the forbidden celebrations. There, overcome by curiosity and divine illusion, Pentheus dressed as a woman to spy on the Maenads, only to be discovered and torn apart by them in their frenzy. It's a brutal story, but beneath its savagery lies a truth. Those who deny their humanity, who repress their own instincts and emotions, eventually fall victim to them. Dionysus is also the patron of theater, the art of masks, illusion, and transformation. Every performance, every stage is his temple. The Greeks believed that when actors donned masks, they invoked Dionysus, stepping into his sacred art of metamorphosis. Through him, mortals explored the range of human emotion, joy, sorrow, desire, despair, all under his divine guidance. He taught that by losing oneself in a role, one might actually find truth. Unlike many gods, Dionysus welcomed everyone, men and women, rich and poor, slave and free. His worship was inclusive, breaking the rigid hierarchies that defined ancient society. In his world, emotion was not weakness, but power, and transformation was sacred. He was the divine voice whispering that freedom is found not in control, but in surrender, not in silence, but in song. But Dionysus was not just about joy and liberation. He embodied the fine line between ecstasy and madness. His wine could heal or destroy, depending on how it was consumed. His freedom could enlighten or unravel. He was both healer and destroyer, comforter and chaos. Through him, mortals learned that life's intensity comes from balance, that one must embrace both order and wildness to truly live. His symbol, the vine, reflects this duality. It grows wild, twisting, unrestrained, yet it must be pruned and tended to bear fruit. Dionysus himself is the vine personified, raw nature shaped by divine intention, chaos transformed into creation. When night deepens and the stars blur like spilled wine across the sky, you can almost feel Dionysus's laughter in the wind. It's the laughter of release, of freedom, of life lived without fear. His story is a reminder that emotion, joy, and chaos are not enemies of reason, but necessary companions. To be human is to feel deeply, to dance on the edge of control, and to find transcendence in the simplest pleasures: a song, a sip, a heartbeat. Dionysus is timeless, the god of joy, madness, transformation, and truth. He teaches that beauty and chaos are intertwined, that liberation requires surrender, and that life's most divine moments are often the wildest ones. So tonight, as you drift into dreams, imagine the flicker of torches in the dark, the rhythm of drums echoing in the forest, and the taste of sweet wine on your tongue. Let Dionysus guide you into that soft, shimmering space between waking and sleep, where passion becomes peace and chaos becomes
Ares, god of war and violence. The air feels heavy, charged with the scent of iron and smoke, as if the world itself is holding its breath before the clash of swords. Tonight, we walk into the crimson heart of conflict, into the realm of Ares, the god of war, fierce, untamed, and forever drenched in the thunderous rhythm of battle. Ares is not a god of strategy or discipline. He is the roar that breaks through silence, the pulse that quickens before a fight, the storm that consumes reason. Where Athena represents wisdom and calculated victory, Ares embodies chaos, the raw, unfiltered hunger for combat that burns in every mortal heart. He is the sound of armor clashing, of warriors screaming, of horses charging through the mud and blood of the battlefield. His origins trace back to Zeus and Hera, but even among the Olympians, Ares was an outcast, too violent, too unpredictable. He thrived in the chaos that others feared. When the world was calm, he was restless. When peace lingered, he was uneasy. He longed for movement, for the storm of emotion and adrenaline that only war could offer. Yet, beneath his savage exterior lies a strange duality. Ares is both destroyer and protector. He brings devastation, but he also honors courage and loyalty. To him, battle is not simply death. It is proof of spirit, of devotion to cause, of the burning vitality that separates the living from the lifeless. In every soldier who charges toward danger, Ares sees a reflection of himself. His presence on the battlefield is a living nightmare and a divine spectacle. When Ares descends, the sky darkens, thunder rolls, and the scent of blood thickens in the air. His spear glows with a red light, his armor shining like molten metal, and his war cry shakes the earth. Yet, in that chaos, some hear not horror, but glory. For Ares, war is the purest expression of passion, brutal, unstoppable, and alive. Ares' story intertwines with that of Aphrodite, the goddess of love. It's one of the most fascinating paradoxes in mythology: love and war, beauty and bloodshed. Their affair is not gentle, it's wild and magnetic, a collision of opposites that defies logic. Where Aphrodite seduces with charm, Ares conquers with power. Together, they represent the two sides of passion, the kiss and the strike, the tenderness and the fury. But even a god of war can fall. In one story, Ares charges into battle against the mortal hero Heracles and loses. Wounded and humiliated, Ares retreats to Olympus, screaming to Zeus for justice, only to be met with silence. The other gods, weary of his recklessness, offer no comfort. This moment reveals something rare, the vulnerability of the invincible. Ares bleeds, he suffers, and in that pain he becomes almost human. Ares' children are as fierce and complicated as their father: Deimos, terror; Phobos, fear; and Harmonia, harmony. The twins of panic and dread often accompany him into war, whispering fear into the hearts of soldiers. Harmonia, in contrast, represents the balance that follows destruction, the calm after chaos. Together, they show the full cycle of Ares' influence, the terror of battle, and the peace that follows only when all else has been burned away. Despite his brutality, Ares was worshipped by many. In Sparta, he was honored as the ultimate symbol of courage and discipline. Warriors prayed to him before battle, asking for his strength and his blessing. They saw in him not just destruction, but vitality, the flame that gives purpose to the fight. In their chants, in their drums, in the way they marched to war, Ares lived again. but the gods themselves often mocked him. Athena called him foolish, driven by impulse rather than reason. Zeus, his own father, once declared that Ares was the most hateful of all gods for his joy in slaughter. Yet even Zeus could not deny his importance, for without conflict there is no progress. Without destruction there is no creation. Ares represents the eternal truth that life itself is struggle, that chaos and order forever dance in balance. In art and legend, Ares is not merely a figure of violence, but a mirror to humanity's own dual nature. Every empire, every revolution, every act of rebellion bears his mark. His presence lingers not only in the clash of swords, but in every heated argument, every surge of anger, every pulse of adrenaline that pushes humans toward both greatness and ruin. He is the God who reminds us that war begins not on the battlefield, but in the heart, in envy, in pride, in the hunger for power and the fear of loss. Yet he also reminds us that courage, sacrifice, and honor can rise from even the darkest flames. So, as the fire of war flickers in the distance, we see Ares not as a monster, but as a force, neither good nor evil, simply inevitable. He is the heartbeat of conflict, the echo of every battle cry, the whisper in every soldier's mind that says, "Stand and fight." And when the dust settles, when the fields lie silent beneath the fading sun, it is said that Ares walks among the fallen, not to gloat, but to honor them. For in their courage he sees the truth he has always sought, that even in chaos there is meaning, and in struggle there is life. So tonight, as you rest, let the sound of distant thunder remind you of him, the God who lives in every heartbeat that dares to fight, in every soul that refuses to yield. For Ares, God of war and violence, is not only the destroyer of peace, but the proof that even in conflict, the spirit of humanity endures.
Before we begin, Hermes, messenger of the gods, take a deep breath. Feel the night air settle softly against your skin. The world outside quiets, and in that silence you can almost hear it. The faint flutter of wings, the whisper of sandals skimming the wind. Tonight we follow that sound into the silver trails of motion, into the story of the one God who never stands still. Hermes, the messenger of Olympus, the god of travelers, thieves, dreams, and the restless pulse of adventure. Hermes was born fast, quite literally. Legend says that mere hours after his birth, he slipped out of his cradle, trotted out of his mother Maia's cave, and stole the sacred cattle of Apollo. Then, before dawn, he invented the lyre using a tortoise shell, strummed a tune, and hummed to himself like a child who'd just rewritten the rules of the world. When Apollo found out and stormed in with divine fury, Hermes didn't panic. He just smiled, played a little melody, and charmed the god of the sun into forgiveness. That's Hermes in a nutshell. Clever, disarming, and impossible to stay angry at. He wasn't the strongest or the loudest of gods, but he was the quickest thinker, the one who always knew how to twist a problem into an opportunity. He could talk his way out of anything, steal your sandals, sell them back to you, and have you thank him for the deal. Hermes' domain wasn't fixed like the others. While Poseidon ruled the seas and Hades guarded the underworld, Hermes belonged to the in-between, the roads, the crossroads, the open skies, and the uncertain spaces between realms. He moved freely among gods, mortals, and even the dead, carrying messages from Olympus to earth and back again. He was the divine courier,
the unseen force connecting heaven and humanity, order and chaos. His symbol, the caduceus, a staff entwined by two serpents, captures his essence perfectly: balance, duality, motion. He was both thief and guide, trickster and protector, the bridge between deception and truth. Every traveler on a lonely road prayed to Hermes for safety. Every merchant whispered his name before counting coins. Every dream that slipped into a mortal's mind in the quiet of the night, that was Hermes too, gliding between worlds, delivering whispers from the gods. He wasn't just fast in body, but in thought. The ancient Greeks saw Hermes as the embodiment of wit, intelligence, and communication. He was the god of language and invention, the spark behind negotiation and trade, and the unseen genius behind every story told around a fire. In him, divine wisdom wasn't solemn or slow. It was playful, curious, and alive. But don't let his charm fool you. Hermes could be dangerously cunning. He tricked Argus, the 100-eyed giant, by lulling him to sleep with stories and music before ending his watch forever. He stole Apollo's arrows, Hera's girdle, and even Hades' helmet, and somehow stayed on everyone's good side. He thrived on chaos, yet never lost control. Where Ares burned the world, Hermes bent it. Perhaps his most profound role, though, was that of the psychopomp, the guide of souls. When mortals died, Hermes was the one who led them down the shadowed path to the underworld. Not as judge, not as executioner, but as companion. The ancients believed that he walked beside the newly dead, speaking softly, keeping them calm as they crossed the threshold between life and eternity. Even in death, Hermes brought comfort, the idea that no one walks alone. Yet Hermes wasn't all mystery and mischief. He had a deeply human warmth. To the Greeks, he represented curiosity, the desire to move, to explore, to connect. He was the spark behind every invention, every idea that dared to cross boundaries. Sailors saw him in the winds that filled their sails. Poets felt him in the rhythm of their words. Merchants found him in every fair trade, and thieves, well, he was practically their patron saint. And maybe that's why people loved him so much. Unlike Zeus, who thundered from on high, or Hades, who ruled in silence, Hermes was close. He laughed with mortals, helped them cheat fate, and sometimes got them into trouble just to see how they'd get out. He didn't demand worship, he invited conversation. In him, divinity felt approachable, mischievous, clever, but kind. One of Hermes' most beautiful stories is his friendship with Perseus, the hero destined to slay Medusa. When Perseus set out on his impossible quest, it was Hermes who appeared at his side, offering advice and gifting him the winged sandals that would carry him across the world. "The world will try to weigh you down," Hermes said, "but if you stay light, you'll never fall." Those sandals weren't just tools, they were symbols of freedom, of the power to rise above fear and fate. Freedom, that's Hermes' greatest gift. He represents the movement of thought, the rebellion against stillness. He is the whisper in your ear that says go when the world tells you to stay. The Greeks built shrines to him along roads and boundaries, marking places of transition, moments of choice. They believed that when you stood at a crossroads, literal or spiritual, Hermes was there, waiting with that sly half-smile, ready to see what you'd choose. Hermes also had a deeply symbolic relationship with dreams. The Greeks believed he carried messages from the gods while mortals slept. Sometimes these dreams were warnings, sometimes gifts, and sometimes riddles meant to spark thought. But every whisper in the night, every flicker of insight, that was his handiwork. Even when unseen, he was always moving, stirring, connecting. To the modern world, Hermes still lives on, not in temples, but in motion itself. He is in every airplane's hum, every road trip, every late-night walk under streetlights. He's in the thrill of discovery, the laughter that breaks tension, the clever word that saves the day. He is the divine spark of communication, proof that understanding and movement can bridge even the widest gaps. So tonight, as you lie still, imagine that faint flutter again, those winged sandals brushing through the air, that playful grin watching from the shadows. Hermes never rests. He's the eternal traveler, the keeper of words and wanderers, the whisperer of dreams. And maybe, just maybe, when you dream tonight, you'll catch a glimpse of him, moving just beyond the edge of your thoughts, smiling as he slips between worlds. For Hermes, the messenger of the gods, is always on the move, and wherever there's a story to tell, he's already there.
Hestia, goddess of hearth and home. Let's slow everything down. Take a deep breath. Let the noise of the day fade into the distance. The rush, the chaos, the endless motion. Feel that quiet warmth settling in, like the soft glow of a fire on a winter night. That's where we're going this evening, into the gentle light of the hearth, into the heart of peace itself. Tonight we tell the story of Hestia, the goddess of hearth and home, the quietest of the Olympians, and yet the one who holds them all together. Hestia isn't the goddess of war or storms or wild passion. She doesn't hurl lightning or spark revolutions. No, she's something much rarer, constant, calm, and unshakably kind. In a pantheon filled with thunder and jealousy, Hestia is the still flame that never flickers. She doesn't demand temples that touch the sky or thunderous prayers. Her altar is smaller, the fire burning at the center of every home, every city, every heart that seeks warmth instead of glory. Born to Cronus and Rhea, Hestia was the eldest of the Olympian siblings, and also the first to be swallowed by her father when he feared being overthrown. When Zeus freed his brothers and sisters, Hestia emerged quietly, blinking into the light of a new world. While her siblings rushed to claim their realms, Zeus to the sky, Poseidon to the sea, Hades to the underworld, Hestia simply chose to stay by the fire. She didn't need conquest. She didn't crave power. Her strength came from peace. The ancient Greeks called her the heart of Olympus. Whenever the gods feasted, Hestia's place was first and last, first to receive the offering, last to leave the table. Every sacrifice, no matter how grand or small, began and ended with her, because fire, her sacred symbol, was life itself. Without it, there was no warmth, no food, no home. She was the pulse of civilization, the guardian of stability. To mortals, Hestia was more than a goddess. She was the essence of safety. Every home in Greece had a hearth dedicated to her, a simple flame that was never allowed to die. When families moved, they carried a spark from their old hearth to light the new one, symbolizing continuity, memory, and love. That tiny fire connected generations. It said, "We are still here." Hestia's nature is deeply paradoxical. She's both invisible and essential. The poets rarely wrote about her.
There are no epic battles, no scandals, no betrayals. She doesn't rage or scheme. She simply is. But her quiet presence held the world in balance. When gods quarreled, it was Hestia who calmed them. When chaos threatened Olympus, she was the anchor that steadied the storm. There's a story, simple but revealing. One day, both Apollo and Poseidon sought Hestia's hand in marriage. They offered her gifts, power, and eternal devotion. But Hestia refused them both. She swore an oath to remain ever virgin, devoted only to peace and the flame she tended. It wasn't out of coldness or fear. It was choice. Hestia chose independence. She belonged to no one, and yet she belonged to everyone. That decision says more about her character than any grand myth could. In a world ruled by passion, pride, and endless conflict, Hestia found divinity in stillness. She didn't run from the world, she nurtured it. While others sought control, she sought connection. Her temple wasn't in the sky or under the waves. It was in the home, where laughter and life flickered together like embers. The Greeks understood her importance deeply. Every city had a public hearth called the Prytanion, where Hestia's eternal flame burned. It represented unity, the idea that as long as that fire burned, the people were one. If it ever went out, it wasn't just bad luck. It meant something sacred had been lost. Trust, community, warmth. So they guarded that fire with their lives. In many ways, Hestia is the soul of Greek civilization. Her fire symbolizes xenia, the sacred bond between host and guest. In ancient Greece, offering warmth to a stranger wasn't just kindness, it was divine duty. Because in that act of sharing food and fire, mortals honored Hestia herself. She taught them that hospitality was holy, that peace began not in treaties, but in simple generosity. And while Zeus ruled the heavens, Poseidon ruled the seas, and Hades ruled the underworld, it was Hestia who ruled within. She governed the inner world, the space of rest, family, and faith. Her domain wasn't measured in miles or mountains, but in moments. A shared meal, a quiet evening, a mother whispering to her child by the fire. It's strange, isn't it, how the quietest figure in mythology became one of its most powerful. Because in truth, what endures longer, the crash of thunder or the glow of a flame? The battles fade, the storms pass, but the hearth fire remains. In modern eyes, Hestia feels like a whisper of wisdom the world has nearly forgotten. She's the reminder that peace is not the absence of conflict, it's the presence of care. She's the spirit that lives in every act of patience, every word spoken gently instead of sharply, every time we choose to listen instead of shout. There's a reason she was both the first and the last in all ceremonies. To the Greeks, Hestia's flame was a circle, unbroken, eternal, endless. She represents beginnings and endings, and the warmth that carries us from one to the other. When you think about it, every home, no matter how small, has a piece of her. Every candle you light, every meal you share, every quiet moment at the end of the day, that's Hestia, the goddess who asks for nothing and gives everything. Because while Zeus may rule the heavens, it's Hestia who rules the heart. And long after the fires of Olympus fade, her flame, the flame of home, peace, and love, still burns
quietly, endlessly, within us all.
The Titans, the old gods before Olympus. As the fire burns low and the world outside slips into silence, we turn our gaze not to Olympus, not to Zeus and his glittering court of thunder and light, but far, far back in time. Before the gods we know, before heroes and wars, before even the whisper of mankind, there was an older age, a time of shadows and vastness, a time of titans. The world was still young then, raw, untamed, and full of wild, sleeping power. There were no temples, no songs, no cities, only the endless sky above and the deep earth below. From that union of sky and soil, Uranus and Gaia, the first divine beings were born, the Titans. They were colossal, ancient beings of unimaginable strength. They didn't merely rule the elements, they were the elements. Mountains rose from their backs, rivers flowed from their tears, and storms crackled in their voices. The Titans were 12 in number, 6 sons and 6 daughters, and each one embodied something vast and eternal. Oceanus, who encircled the world with his endless waters. Hyperion, who carried the light of the sun. Thea, his radiant wife, who gave birth to the dawn. Coas and Phoebe, keepers of wisdom and prophecy. Crius, Iapetus, and the others, each a fragment of the universe itself. And then there was Cronus, the youngest but the boldest, the one whose name would echo through eternity. You see, Uranus, the sky, feared his children. He saw their strength growing and worried they might one day overthrow him. So he did what tyrants always do. He tried to control what he could not contain. He buried his own children deep within Gaia, the earth. The world trembled with her grief. Her heart cracked, her voice became a storm, and she begged her children to rise against their father. Only one stepped forward, Cronus. With a blade of flint forged from the bones of the earth itself, he ambushed Uranus in the dark of night. The sky split open with a scream, and from that wound the age of the Titans began. Cronus freed his brothers and sisters, and together they ruled. The heavens and the earth were theirs. For a time the world was calm, golden even. The Greeks would later call it the Golden Age, when mortals lived without toil, without pain, and the earth gave its gifts freely. But, as every story in Greek myth reminds us, peace is only ever borrowed, never owned. Cronus, now the ruler of the cosmos, began to fear what his father had once feared, that his children would overthrow him. And so when his wife Rhea gave birth to each child, he swallowed them whole, one by one, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, devoured by the very father who should have protected them. Rhea's cries went unanswered. Her motherhood turned to sorrow, until she gave birth to her last child, Zeus. This time she hid the baby in a cave on Mount Ida in Crete, and wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth, handing it to Cronus. He swallowed it without question. And deep within the cave, little Zeus grew, fed by nymphs, his cries drowned out by the pounding of drums, so his father would never hear. When Zeus became grown, he returned not as a child, but as a storm. With cunning and fury, he tricked Cronus into vomiting up his swallowed siblings. The gods, young, bright, and furious, took arms against their colossal parents. The Titanomachy, the war between the Titans and the Olympians, raged for 10 years. The sky was torn apart, mountains shattered, the seas boiled. Zeus hurled thunderbolts that split the heavens. Poseidon struck with his trident, shaking the seas. Hades wielded shadows and death itself. And from the dark pits of Tartarus, monstrous allies, the Cyclops and the Hecankairos, the 100-handed giants, joined their cause. The Titans fought fiercely. Atlas, the mighty Titan, held the skies themselves. Oceanus raged, flooding the earth. The sun dimmed, the stars fell. It was the end of one world and the birth of another. At last, Zeus stood victorious. The Titans were defeated, some banished to the farthest edges of the earth, others imprisoned deep in Tartarus, beneath layers of stone and fire. And as punishment for his defiance, Atlas was condemned to bear the weight of the heavens upon his shoulders for all eternity. And thus began the age of the Olympians, the world of Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, and all the gods we know. The Titans became ghosts, reminders of a time when power was vast, ancient, and unrefined. But if you listen closely to the old stories, you'll hear something more complicated than simple victory and defeat. Because the Titans weren't monsters, they were foundations, the raw forces that made existence possible. Without them, the Olympians would have had nothing to rule. Even Zeus, in his pride, inherited his father's fear that the children of power will always rise to challenge their parents. History, it seems, has a divine sense of repetition. The ancient Greeks knew this well. They saw in the story of the Titans a reflection of the human struggle, the endless cycle of creation and destruction, of children rebelling against their parents, of the old giving way to the new. They called it fate. We might call it time. And even Kronos himself was more than a tyrant. His name, Kronos, is where we get the word chronology, time. And that's fitting, isn't it? Because time devours all things. It gives birth, it nurtures, and eventually it consumes. Just as Kronos devoured his children, time swallows everything. Empires, heroes, gods themselves. But maybe that's not tragedy. Maybe that's balance. Because for something new to rise, something old must fall away. The Titans weren't destroyed. They became part of the world's bones, the mountains, the rivers, the silence beneath the stars. The Olympians didn't erase them. They built upon them. And so when you look at the sky tonight, when you see the slow dance of the constellations or feel the weight of the earth beneath your feet, know that the Titans are still there, sleeping, dreaming, waiting. They are the quiet power beneath everything, the memory of an older rhythm that hums through the cosmos. For though the Olympians took the throne, it was the Titans who built the stage. And perhaps somewhere deep in that eternal dark, Kronos still dreams, not of conquest, not of revenge, but of the moment before fear, before the hunger for power, when the world was whole and time had only just begun. So, as this chapter closes, let the firelight flicker once more. Because though gods rise and fall, flames burn and fade, the story, like time, goes on. The Titans may be gone, but their echo still hums in the heart of creation. And if you listen long enough, in the quiet between thunder and silence, you might still hear them breathe. the first gods, the forgotten giants, the beginning of everything.